Good day, everyone. I am very excited to be here today and to present a topic that I think is very important nowadays. My name is Misha Hanin. I am a trusted business and technology advisor, solution managing director, and senior solutions architect at iRangers International. First of all, why do I care? Why am I here today? So, I live and breathe technology for more than 25 years so far. I started with Windows 1, and down the road my first Exchange project was built on top of Exchange 4. Who remembers it? I am very proud to be one of those 500 people in the world who participated in very intensive training, the Microsoft Certified Master. Only 5 Canadians were trained during those 10 years of MCM program. I've been working with cloud technology since early 2004, beginning with Google, Rackspace, The Planet, and many others, you name it. I've been through many Exchange and Active Directory deployment projects and many Office 365 migrations. I have worked with Office 365 since early betas when it was known as Live EDDU. At iRangers, I work with many talented IT experts. All of us have been involved in projects around the world. We've done projects in Australia, China, India, Middle East, South Africa, Europe, US, and even Canada. Today I will touch on some of the most important things that we've seen during our many projects. Let's talk about our agenda for today. Probably some of you would like to know, should or shouldn't we need to go to the cloud? Maybe you would like to know how to configure things. And of course, I'm sure many of us want to know about procedures, instructions, and scripts. Well, today we are not going to talk about all of those things. Instead, I'd like to talk about what is cloud-enabled architecture, what to keep in mind, what we need to consider, and how to prepare. With all those important things, we'll be able to make almost any project to a successful project. Many of us have been in a situation when business had made a decision and asked us to move forward with an implementation. I do believe that we all can benefit from this decision. And here's a small list of the benefits. Standardization. Cloud is unable to accomplish 100% of use cases. However, if we get at least 80%, it already huge value to the business. Cloud is very good example of standardization approach. We can use cloud as a tool to drive standardization across the enterprise. Flexibility. All of us know what cloud brings to the table from flexibility point of view. As an example, we can provision or deprovision resources whenever we need. We can introduce a new service the moment it becomes available. Simplified and unified management. I love this one. we can have a centralized management approach. Yes, we finally get a chance to standardize and simplify everything. Which cloud type should we go to? Here are the most common cloud types: public cloud, private cloud, hybrid. I'm sure you all know the differences between those clouds. So let's just dive deeper and see what is 21st century IT architecture. We call it cloud-enabled architecture. Based on our experience from many projects, we came to one conclusion. Nowadays, any IT architecture should be cloud-enabled. What does it mean? We do believe that architecture should be built in a way where we have no boundaries. When we deploy an IT service to the business, this service could be deployed either in the cloud or on premises, and both environments should be integrated and working in fully transparent coexistence. Sometimes people think that it's called hybrid mode. Well, we call it cloud-enabled architecture because we expand functionality of the common meaning of the hybrid mode. And before moving forward, I'd like to briefly show you what misconceptions about cloud some people have. We really need to warn the business about those misconceptions. And here are those misconceptions. Cloud is easy. Many of you have seen this before. Integration with cloud provides high availability. Moving resources is easy. And this one is really interesting. If we use cloud, we don't need servers on premises. Sometimes people imagine that when they move 100% of their servers to the cloud, their data center would look like this. So we all know that almost any IT infrastructure starts with identity management. Synchronized identity. This is probably the easiest solution when we talk about cloud. This is when the accounts and password hashes are synchronized to the cloud. And user has the same password on premises as well as in the cloud. In this case, password is verified by Azure Active Directory. Well, do you have security experts in your organization? Try to tell them that we are going to synchronize passwords to the cloud. Yes, all of us know that we sync only password hash. However, in majority of cases, security experts don't even want to talk about this at all. As an alternative, and this is really the most common solution many enterprises go with, federated identity. Of course, a user has the same password on premise as well as in the cloud. When we use this architecture, password hashes are not synchronized to the cloud. In this case, password is verified by on-premises Active Directory, of course through ADFS servers. And you know what? We still recommend to follow Microsoft's best practice and keep password sync on, even though ADFS will be used as a primary method of authentication. So, when we get OK from security experts for federated identity, now we have to build some infrastructure on premises. And as you can see, here's a high-level architecture of what is required to address this. Imagine we managed to convince security expert to follow Microsoft best practice, and we started to sync password hash. And yes, we use ADFS as a primary method of authentication. What if we need to switch the authentication method now? One of the reasons for this decision could be the connectivity issues with on-premise infrastructure. By the way, in this case, users won't be able to authenticate and get access to the cloud. We really need to keep in mind that the switch back from federated identity to synchronized identity takes about 2 hours, and in most cases even more. Officially, Microsoft says that we need to expect an additional hour for each 2,000 users in the domain. Once we have switched back to synchronized identity, in this situation, it's better to have password hash already be presented in the cloud. The user will be back on track and will have access to the cloud. I really wanted to show you this architecture. This is high-level cloud-enabled architecture from one of our recent projects. Now this client has about 8,000 users in the Microsoft Cloud. By the way, the right cloud-enabled architecture allowed us, when it was really necessary, to move more than 3,000 users to the cloud in just one weekend. In this project, we had multiple forests and domains, and the goal was to have full and seamless integration between all systems, including Office 365, of course. One of the main components in this architecture was IRSync server. This is one of our deployments that allows us to synchronize any objects from anywhere. We even can synchronize any attributes of any objects. IRSync even allows us to change the object types during the sync. You can play with free version of IRSync by downloading it from iRangers website. The address is very simple, irangers.com. Now, let's talk about what to consider during cloud-enabled projects. Of course, UPNs is probably one of the most important things. Name resolutions, geolocations, stretchable, bandwidth and QoS, and of course, end-user devices. Talking about UPNs, many enterprise organizations have built their environment a while back and since then just upgrade it over and over. Even though nowadays the information is widely available, we still encounter configuration issues such as this one, or even this one. In both cases, the cloud integration will be extremely complicated or might even be impossible. Here's a great example of how to configure our user environment that will allow quick, easy, and painless cloud integration. It's hard to see the difference, right? But in this example, our UPN is using real public domain skyhigh.ca, not skyhigh.local as it was before. We do see a huge demand to move servers to the cloud, like Azure. Unfortunately, many companies still refer to their servers just by simple NetBIOS name, like this one. They connect to them by using the following format: fs01/data. We always say to those organizations, wake up, it's the 21st century, we need to use FQDNs. The connection should look like this. Geolocations. Server's location. In which geographical region is my Office 365 tenant hosted? For some organizations, this is a very important topic, and I get this question almost every time I'm talking about Microsoft Cloud services. As you probably know, Microsoft divides the world in 3 regions: North and South America, Europe and Africa, and Asia and Australia. Microsoft selects a primary data center within the region where the organization's main office address is located. Of course, if Microsoft has a data center in this country. As an example, Microsoft Data Center in Canada became available just in 2016. Prior to this day, all Canadians were hosted somewhere in the world, most likely in United States. Actually, Microsoft created interactive data maps that provide specific geographic details about where customer data is stored in Office 365. Specifically, it provides information regarding the location of Microsoft data centers throughout the world. You can see a link to those maps on the left side. If you are not sure where is your mailbox hosted, you can use a PowerShell script to determine the location of your mailbox. This one is really interesting. Geolocations. SQL, always on. The always on availability group that was introduced in SQL 2012 is high availability and disaster recovery solution that provides an enterprise level alternative to database mirroring. No more database mirroring nowadays. In some cases, organizations are not ready yet to use cloud-based SQL service, but they are okay to have some SQL services in the cloud. In those cases, one of the SQL servers that is a part of always on availability group could be deployed in the cloud. We do have cases when all servers were deployed in the cloud. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the following diagram. You know what? Technically, there is nothing wrong with it, except I don't know why when we deploy a DFS solution, even nowadays, by default, it uses just NetBIOS name of the servers. Please remember to configure your DFS architecture to use FQDN. It's really simple. Here's a command. When business has multiple locations, usually we stretch a DFS infrastructure across those locations. In this scenario, users in London connect to DFS servers in London, and users in New York to their local server. Now, let's bring cloud to the picture. With the cloud enable architecture, it's very simple. Let's move our London server to the cloud. If we've done everything right and a proper DNS structure isn't in place, users in London will connect to DFS server in Azure without even feeling the differences. Of course, if in London's office we have a required bandwidth. And talking about bandwidth, don't use ADSL or cable modems. Start thinking about ExpressRoute. Bandwidth is something many companies do not consider during their integration with the cloud. As a result, systems like Skype for Business are working not as expected. Please always refer to network planning and performance tuning for Office 365. And here are some of bandwidth requirements for Skype for Business. Really, for big enterprises, we strongly recommend to use ExpressRoute. By the way, QoS is only available for ExpressRoute. And now let's talk about user devices. This one looks very obvious, but believe me, we still see environments with thousands of old systems, like Windows XP and Office XP. Unfortunately, those versions do not work with cloud as we want them to. Don't use expired systems. On top of that, we could have Windows 7 or even Windows 10 with Office 2013, and we will still can see some issues when we work with Office 365. Keeping our system up to date is the key in cloud-enabled architecture. So let's talk about key points to remember. Know your environment and business needs. It's very important and helps us to build a needed architecture. Be sure all systems are healthy, up to date, and ready for the cloud before we start enabling cloud. Stable on-premise infrastructure is mandatory. Without it, we can't move forward at all. As I said, UPNs and FQDNs are very important. Without proper configuration, it's almost impossible to move to the cloud-enabled architecture. And of course, it's very important to work with experts who have done this many times. Apparently, this is where my presentation ends. I will do my best to answer all of your questions. If you have any more questions, you can always ask them on my blog, highclouder.com. I'd like to thank all of you for watching. Stay tuned for more great sessions.